Ladies and gentlemen, big class for tonight. Your boy Matt DeLong. And me and Gabe are going to be here just supporting Matt, answering questions, making sure we all learn together. But the program is called What Entrepreneurs Teach Their Kids. Matt, what's an entrepreneur?
Entrepreneur is someone who can see the future, someone who can take risks and make the future come into reality.
Nice. It's a good answer. I like that answer. Bring the future into reality. Love it.
One who can see what other people can't see and capitalize on opportunities.
Yeah, capitalization. I love it. Very cool. So what then do entrepreneurs teach their kids, Matt?
They teach a lot of things. So as we go through this, I'm going to tell some tips and tricks along with some stories of what's worked for us and kind of tell you a little bit about my story. So,
all right.
Yeah. So let's go ahead in the chat pane. If you guys don't mind, go ahead and post the age of your kids in the chat pane. If they're 12 or 15 or whatever that looks like for your family dynamic. 9 and 6, 9 and 13. Wow, 9 is like the magic number there. Look at that. Bunch of 9s. Wow. Nice. Okay. So we have some younger, like elementary, middle school age. Cool. Courtney with 4 kids. Look at that. You're on like the 2-year plan there, I think. 15. Yeah. So we got some teenagers.
Dang, yeah. Courtney, 8, 10, 12, and 15. Do you have a medal? Did you win a prize? Oh man, that's tough. Amazing.
So a couple of years ago, I was sitting in a hotel room. This is outside in Ireland, and I was confused. I was nervous. I was questioning my own sanity. And my youngest daughter was 16 at the time, and she had fallen in love with riding horses. And she'd been doing that for about 10 years. And she grew up riding horses, and we had just sold her last horse because she had outgrown him, and we were shopping for a new horse. And she found this ad online. It was titled The Brad Pitt of Horses. Jeremy, if you can imagine the Brad Pitt of horses, chiseled jawline, 6-pack abs, whatever that looks like in the horse world. But there's one catch, and the catch was he wasn't in Tennessee where we live. He was in Ireland. And I'm like, aren't there horses for sale in the US? Aren't there closer horses for sale? And so we ended up looking at a handful of horses in the US, but nothing really stood out. So we did what any normal father would do. And we went to go see the Brad Pitt of horses in Ireland. And so not only did we test drive him, we drove all over the countryside of Ireland. This is in 2019. And we tested all kinds of horses, test drove them. I checked the brakes and the throttle, make sure everything looked good. It was working. And so here I was in this hotel room with the decision to make, asking myself, am I ready to wire a large sum of money for this 1,400 pound creature, this 17.3 hands Irish sport horse to help advance my daughter's career? Am I ready to do that or not? And that decision would set off a sequence of events that would literally change her life and change the life of my youngest daughter. So as you guys can see, we bought a horse from Ireland and had it flown back. It was, I'm writing the details of how that works. It's not a normal process. For some reason, Jeremy, they won't let us bring him on as a carry-on. I don't know why. And so you guys can see the top row. His name is Magma. And we brought him back from Ireland, and he flew from Dublin, Ireland to Chicago, went through this whole process with quarantine and blood work and this whole process. But my daughter's Callie there on the top left, her bedroom upstairs is full of these first and second place ribbons that she won since we purchased Mr. Brad Pitt, Mr. Magma. So what do you guys think? Does that look like a Brad Pitt horse to you?
I was more like a Denzel Washington, but
yeah, liquid magma. Yep. So he was he was not they told me it cost like $4,000 to bring him over, and it was multiples of that. Obviously you have to purchase it and you had to transport it. Is quite the expense. So So our oldest daughter here on the bottom is Shelby, and she's a singer-songwriter. She is currently, as we record this in 2021, she is a freshman, and she goes to a local university here, lives on campus, and she's a singer-songwriter. We got a couple songs on Spotify, and that's kind of our entourage, our family. So first question I want to throw out in front of you guys is, when it comes to success, to your kids' success, are you interested or are you committed? So I was reading the statistic, and it says by the time a child is 12 years old, you would have spent something like 90% of your time that you're going to spend with them already. So Gabe, you're 11, you got Jeremy, Svetlana, you got one more year, and the majority of your time will be spent, because as they get older, teenagers, they not move away, but their time is spent less and less with their parents, right? They have their own friends, they end up getting their own car, they end up doing more things without parents. And so being a parent here is like an inside job, right? It's not something that you can just delegate to a nanny. And we all want our kids to grow up to be as successful or more successful than we are as entrepreneurs, but exactly how is that done? So your job as a parent literally is to provide unconditional love. That's the very first and foremost, number one. A child has to have a good root base that they feel loved and feel confident to make mistakes, to grow. The second thing is you also have to prepare them for real life, right? So they're literally training to be adults. And as they mature into teenagers, you also help them identify and foster their calling and their talents. And so we learned early on, our youngest daughter loved, I think it was like somewhere in first or second grade, that she loved horses. So they always get you at these summer camps, right? Jeremy was like, $200, come to the summer camp. And that was the most expensive $200 I ever spent in my life, because that whole series of events, from buying horses and going overseas and buying another horse and a bigger horse, it became something totally, it took on a life of its own.
That's a crazy stat about the 90%, man. I've never heard that before, but that's kind of staggering in a way. It is scary, It is, absolutely.
Yeah. So when I asked the question, are you guys committed? I just want to make sure you understand, we're not talking about $45 piano lessons. We're not talking about a $1,500 drum set. I mean, committed. And so there I was in the hotel room trying to think about, do I want to do this? Do I not? Am I committed? Am I not committed? So we bought a horse. And being committed also means you're investing your time and your dollars, and that's for years and years and years. That's not just like as most of you probably know who've owned boats, what's the first happiest day is the first day you have it, and the first day you get rid of it, right? Same thing with a horse. like you're constantly paying to keep the thing alive, right? So we ended up learning a lot about the horse world and all kinds of stuff we didn't even know was a thing, and the whole horse show scene and how all that works. And again, it wasn't just a one-time check that we wrote. It was like an open checkbook for time and money. And our oldest is a singer-songwriter, so we had to get out the checkbook, so to speak, for all of the music stuff she's done, the music coaching, the lessons, the recitals. She got to sing at the Grand Ole Opry in 2019, writing some big checks for producers to record her songs. Again, guys, this isn't a $45 piano lesson. This is a big, big commitment, especially when your kids have expensive hobbies like mine do. So any questions about that so far?
I love it. Those are some good jobs. At least number one, easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
Number one's easy.
It is. So this is a Tony Robbins thing, is that their identity determines their habits, right? So in 2020, Callie was on an equestrian eventing team that we'd hoped, 2019, she was on a team that we'd hoped would qualify her for the Junior Olympics. And she was like on her way to that and for her equestrian sport. And she was invited to train with this Olympic athlete in Lexington, Kentucky. And he had competed in the 2016 Summer Olympics, and she got to move on to the farm. She had a roommate, she had her own apartment, she was literally independent. She was 16 at the time. And her entire world is wrapped up in this sport. All her friends, her clothes, like where she spends time. Everything is related to horses. And so her identity determined her habits. And, years before COVID happened, she decided, or as a family, we decided she wanted to do homeschooling. And so we never really had to ever tell her to go to the barn to ride her horse. If anything, we had to tell her to come home. It's late, come home. She would spend all of her time and attention there. And again, if your kid's identity is built around this and that determines their habits, and what does it say for kids who maybe don't have a good, healthy self-image? Maybe they feel they've been called names at school, wimpy loser, whatever that looks like, whatever kids say these days, it's super cruel. I remember going through it myself. And, if they have that image of themselves, what does that say about the friends they make, how they spend their time, how they make their decisions, how they carry themselves? And so having a healthy self-image and having this solid view of themselves is really, really important. And, trying to help their kids identify what their interests are, help solidify what that image looks like. And so if you don't know what your kids are into, maybe they're not old enough, maybe they're still figuring out. The good news is that's what Saturdays and summers are for, right? To explore, to try new things, to visit new places. It doesn't always have to cost a lot of money. And I wish my kids had picked cheaper hobbies, cheaper sports. I don't even want to add it up, but at the end of the day, easy 6 figures doesn't even matter, right? So trying to help them figure out what they really, really like, what they're really into, just helps build a solid human. And the earlier, the better. My youngest figured out when she was 6 or 7, first or second grade. So. Okay. So Jeremy, what do you, Elon Musk, Oprah Winfrey, and the Pope all have in common?
We all breathe oxygen.
You're all incredibly good looking.
That's true. That's and we have the exact same amount of time.
Exactly. So the average person has about 1,000 minutes a day to spend. If you think about 24 hours a day minus sleep, it's roughly give or take about 1,000 minutes a day. And your time is like sunflower seeds. You can literally waste them because you get more the next day, or you can be super, super diligent with those. And so the current generation, unfortunately, of our kids are addicted to selfies, the video games, all these things that don't help them build the future version of themselves, right? And they don't always value their time the way we would want them to, we have to help them reframe time in such a way that it's seen as valuable. So apps like TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, it's all a struggle for us to teach our kids that time is limited. It's like a scarce resource, right? So what happens when you guys think of your time and your kids' time? It's like scarcity, like it's a scarce resource. It's not an ever-flowing abundance. It puts this urgency on the current, an urgency on the present. And it helps if you can help them spend some of their free time building the future version of themselves. So in my coaching students, what I try to kind of impress on people is that everyone is at different stages of trading and everyone's at different stages of parenting. And if you can think of, coming from a software background, Jeremy, if you can think of right now, you're building Jeremy like 5.0, right? And Jeremy 4.0 got you so far. Jeremy 5.0 is going to get you to the next level. And at some point, there'll be Jeremy 6.0 and 7.0. And if you think of it in those terms, that when you have some free time, if you're able to improve the future version of yourself instead of just wasting time. So if you can imagine, like every time kids spend an hour on just wasting activities, you think of it like taking $100 bill, shredding it and just throwing it away, right? That's just lost future time. But if you spend some time doing things like improving the future version of yourself, reading books, podcasts, learning something new, learning a new skill, then visualize that as like you're getting a $100 bill, like you're earning a future $100 bill. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And
yeah.
I love the dollar bill perspective, just to think through it, because it gives you something tangible, kind of helps you like visually see it and understand it.
Right. So when I sold my software company in 2016, the new owner and I, we collectively like worked together to interview a new CEO to take over after I was stepping down. And this one guy stood out so much. He had this, it was like a sales background, and he interviewed tons of salespeople in his career. And he would do this thing where he would ask to look at someone's iPhone. And I'm like, what's the story with looking at someone's iPhone? And he would literally like open their phone and count how many game apps were installed, how many games were installed on their phone, to determine whether someone was either a time waster or they were clued in to this thing about improving, using your free time to improve the future version of yourself. And I wasn't clued into this like ritual that he did when I first met him. He's like, Matt, let me see your phone. So I handed him my phone, and how many games do you think he found on my iPhone? 0.
Games?
No game, 0. So you just have to be very, very intentional with how you spend your time. And everyone has the same 1,000 minutes. We don't all have the same free time, but we all have the same 1,000 minutes depending on how we want to spend it. And we all have obligations, family, work. We all have things that we can spend time on. But when we have downtime, do we want to just waste that? I mean, it's okay to watch a movie, all that's fine, but we have to be very, very intentional about trying to improve and create this Jeremy 5.0 or this Courtney 2.0 or Chris. And we do the same thing with our kids, right? Where we're just teaching them that your time is very, very valuable, and you can literally spend your free time to help build the new version of yourself. So another way to think about time is my wife a few years ago, she inspired me to call she would call her parents every week. And so she would call her dad on Mondays, her stepmom on Tuesdays, and her sister on Wednesdays or something like that. And a few years into doing that, she got the call that her dad had passed away. And it was literally she had no idea that her last call, literally days before, was her last call with her father. And so my dad, I do the same thing with my parents now to this day, started a few years ago. And my dad's 76 years old, and he never really took his health very seriously. He's had some heart issues and he lives by himself. But regardless, I call him every Thursday. And when he picks up the phone, he's like, Matt, it must be Thursday. And so the idea is, of course, we're talking about kids, but every one of us are also kids, and we have parents. So we have the other side of this too. And you have to be intentional and not waste time. There's nothing wrong with enjoying movies, nothing wrong with playing video games. That can't be the sole focus of every waking minute. There's so much more productivity and so much more things to learn, especially when you're younger. So, and then also I do call my mom every Friday. And for those of you who may have a strained relationship with your parents, it's not a bad time to try to mend that and repair that. You really don't know how much time you're going to have left. You really don't. And it's a great habit to start to call your parents on a weekly basis. So again, as a parent, your job is to prepare your kids for real life. You see what I did there, Jeremy? Real life. And part of that is ensuring that they spend a healthy amount of time working to improve the future version of themselves. Yep.
Love it.
So I want to read you guys a little excerpt. This is kind of based on a book that I'm working on called What Entrepreneurs Teach Your Kids. I want to read a little excerpt to you guys. And then we'll continue. So this is something that I kind of started this whole project. It blew my mind, and I'll read it with you. I'll read it for you. So a few years ago, as I walked into my favorite barbecue restaurant on a warm Friday afternoon, I was greeted by the smoky aroma of a wood-fired grill and approached Jack with a firm handshake. Our paths had crossed a few weeks prior at a men's breakfast, and we agreed to a later lunch meeting. We took our seats across the table from one another, and after the usual small talk, he asked me if my software company was hiring. I was a little caught off guard and a little confused by his question. He was elderly, probably in his mid-70s, and at the time, my software company's average team member was in their 20s or 30s. Still confused, I responded, "Yes, we have several openings. What do you have in mind?" Now listen to this, gang. His answer absolutely stunned me and became the catalyst for what would later re-energize this project. He said, and I quote, "My son needs a job. He needs to move out of my basement, but he can't keep a job for more than 6 months." Looking across the table at this elderly man who had built a real estate empire and lived in the most prominent gated community in Nashville and had a lifetime of success, still confused, I asked, "How old is your son?" He leaned forward and his answer knocked the wind out of me as he whispered, he's 52 years old. 52 years old. What seemed like minutes rolled by before I could gather my thoughts and respond, I'm sorry, I can't help you. And I thought to myself, why would I touch that with a 10-foot pole? So later that week, as I was recalling the conversation, I wondered, how did he get there? How could that happen? Where did he miss the off-ramp? How could dad's success produce someone that didn't even have the responsibilities of a regular adult? And what does being a successful parent mean? And at what age do you introduce money or responsibilities or growing up? And my mind was racing with questions I wasn't sure that I wanted the answers to. Crazy story, huh?
Crazy story, man. Yeah. 52. Like, that is like, what? You know, it's mind-boggling.
True story. And I was actually, I was overseas in 2019 when I got word that he had actually passed away. And I thought, he spent his whole life building this real estate empire and he only had one son. And, can you imagine a lifetime of intentionality and effort in building something that you just hand off to someone who has no idea, and who knows what would happen when Johnny Boy takes over the empire? Who knows? But it can't be good, right? And it seems like a waste of a lot of wasted effort. Yeah. The guy in the slide probably did have he probably did have a lot of games on his phone. Right. So adults in training is this kind of term that I came up with. And it just means you have insights as a parent. You have insights into how to manage time and money. And if you think about time and money, it's kind of like rainwater, where it'll just go wherever you let it, but you have to be super intentional about where you want to route things, right? If you want to save money, if you want to spend time a certain way, you have to be super, super intentional about that. And as a parent, again, it's your job to teach your kids for life. But as they mature and get older and become teenagers, you add this other thing of fostering their calling and figuring out their talents. And I remember when I got my first real job in the late 90s, I worked for a web design company and I was making a whopping $32,000 a year. This is years and years ago, of course. And I was thinking, what am I going to do with all this money? And as you guys know, when you're newly married, you have kids, it doesn't go nearly as far as you think it does. But anyone, literally anyone, any age, any kid can literally grow their money tree, right? So you guys may have heard a famous book by Jeremy Alexander Newsom, Money Grows on Trees. The idea that you can literally take some kind of small seed, whether it's time or money, and you can plant that. And the seeds are either time or money, but you can grow that over time. And so when you're younger, you get a job and you're essentially trading time for money. But as you get older, you can literally spend money to free up your time. So type a 1 into the chat pane. If anyone has ever read The Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki, amazing book. Nikita, oh my gosh, what's up? Yeah, so the idea of you working for money or money working for you is kind of an interesting concept that I learned early on. I don't remember when the book came out, but I was in my 20s when I read it the first time. And to this day, I literally will reread it every year. And so this idea of using your money to free up your time, what are some examples of that, guys? Type that into the chat pane. What are some examples of using money to free up your time?
I have a lot of examples.
House cleaner.
So, yep. Having someone to help you clean, having someone to help you cook, having a driver, having someone that can help you in your business, right? Having someone that can help you trade, having someone that can help you remove mistakes, having someone that can help you speed up your learning curve. I mean, the list goes on and on. Literally everything. You can outsource everything.
Right. And so if you have a little bit of money, you can literally trade that and get free time, right? And usually when you're younger, you're trading time for money because you don't have money. So you're just using your time to trade for money. But then when you get older, it's the other way around, right? You're trying to use money to free up more time to spend with the family, to do more coaching, do whatever it is. And so it's interesting if you think about it in those terms. So highly recommend that book if you have not read it. It's called The Cash Flow Quadrant. Jeremy, can you grab a link to that maybe on Amazon? Paste it in there. And so things like homework, test scores, none of that really matters in the real world. It's important, but it's not the most important, right? You guys know this, but there are smart kids that struggle with taking tests. I know this. I know things. That was me. I struggled to take it. I couldn't focus, and I would always, my ADD, always dreaming about other things. And so in high school and middle school, kids spend so much time just trying to fit in. And then they graduate and then they realize, wait, the real world isn't about fitting in. It's more about like trying to stand out. So like everything you learned kind of takes a wild 180-degree sharp turn when you got out of high school. And do you think my songwriter daughter needs to learn algebra, right? My kids, they had this thing where this acronym, they would say math is mental abuse towards humans, MATH acronym, mental abuse towards humans.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. And so things like, there's nothing wrong with learning to balance a checkbook, mowing the grass, cleaning toilets, whatever. But my point is that those aren't like the top lessons. I don't think those are the top lessons for future entrepreneurs, especially when you can easily pay someone to do that for you, right? Especially as they get older, get their own income. It's not that big of a deal to learn that. Obviously it doesn't hurt, but it's not the top lesson. So when our kids were younger, they would clean their room and they would say, "Dad, I'm ready for an inspection." And what we would do is I reserve the right to inspect the quality of them cleaning the room. Now, for those of you kids that might be on here, you know that sweeping things under the bed, in the closet, we've all been kids. We know all the tricks, right? So they would they would say they're ready for inspection. And then we would reserve the right to inspect the quality. And they would get this thing called a free time pass. And it was basically just laminated card, and I made at Kinko's, and it said free time pass, and it'd say until, and I'd write in a marker, until 8:30. You have a free time pass until 8:30. And they would, if they got caught playing without having this pass, then they would get in trouble. Right? And this idea of I need to do certain things, homework and school first, and then I can do then I'm permitted and allowed to have free time. And so our kids started with chores like cleaning the room. Then it became like dishes, laundry, making meals. And I think they learned if I bomb making the meals, I will never be asked to make meals ever again. So kids learn these little shortcuts, these little hacks. And then as they grow older, they get these like special projects to earn money. And then as they get older and older, then they get their own job, they have their own checking account, and they literally manage their own money. So my boy Elon Musk says this, and I love this. Have you guys seen this before? I think it's possible for ordinary people to choose to be extraordinary. Think about that for a minute, guys. It's possible for ordinary people to choose to be extraordinary. So what's the difference between ordinary and extraordinary? It's that little extra, right? A little extra is the difference. And it's pretty amazing that you can literally just choose that. Now, how many of you guys type a 7 into the chat pane if you think that Jeremy Alexander Newsom has chosen to be extraordinary, right? It's like this decision to give everything 110%. We're here today because of that choice. I'm here today, you're here today, this class, everything. We're here because of that choice. But if you just think about it, it doesn't require a whole bunch of it doesn't require a huge bank account. You don't have to have lots of money in your trading account. You don't have to have a huge crypto account. It's just a decision that you're going to make and choose to be extraordinary, right? And so there's these 3 fundamental concepts that I try to relay and go over and over in the book. And it's basically this idea of making good decisions and then learning from your mistakes and learning to adapt. And so the most expensive mistake that you can make is what? It's being able to the most expensive mistake you can make is the one you don't learn from, right? So you make a mistake, you pay the price, you make the mistake again, you pay the price again, just over and over. And so as long as you're able to do these 3 things, these 3 basic things, regardless of where you are in the world, even if you're in the poorest country in Nigeria, wherever you are, this can easily be learned, but you have to be intentional, right? To make good decisions. So spend time thinking about big decisions. And it's easy to practice. Like, do I buy those new Air Jordans or not? Well, let me think about how much is the $150, $200 for the new shoes or the new video game. How much is that going to be worth 10, 20, 30 years from now? And I'll tell you, it could easily be worth 30, 50x of whatever the current value is. So, what is the Air Jordan's going to be worth in 30 years from now? You might get lucky, it might be a collector item, but it's not the point. The point is you literally can spend time making good decisions and learning to do that. It's a process. And then learning from your mistakes, of course, easy. And then learning to adapt, right? So we all have had different things in life that pop up that we weren't quite prepared for. In 2011, Nikita knows this because he was with me. Nikita used to work for me. We discovered that a hacker had broken into my software company and stolen 250,000 credit card numbers. And I didn't ask for that. It wasn't something I chose, but I was absolutely responsible for it. And I had to figure it out. And the lawsuits that came in and the stress and people quitting and all of that, at the end of the day, I had to learn to adapt, right? It was something that I just had to do. There was no choice. And when you become an entrepreneur, this journey, it literally changes you. Just like becoming a trader, you have to become a different person, right? And a lot of people think of entrepreneurship like it's kind of like a zip line where it's a straight shot from A to B, but it's really not. It's like going out on a sailboat and you have to deal with these storms that come and you have to like go through all this stuff and you learn to adapt from that. So any questions?
Love it, man. It's huge because it seems like an easy statement to make. You get to choose, but it's something that you can do on a daily basis. Because I don't want people to think like, oh, you just do it and it's like, oh, we're good forever. Once you make that choice, everything's fine. Because with ordinary challenges, if you're extraordinary, you'll have extraordinary challenges, like the one you just mentioned. Right? That's something that I would say, thousands of people on the entire planet will ever face. Which means that's an extraordinary statistic. That's right. So you chose that path, you chose that direction. And so it's a constant choice. It's something that we can continually choose over and over and over.
Right. So at the end of the day, again, it's just a choice that you can make. And so parents, those of you on the call, those of you listening to the recording, it's literally up to you. You can make the choice. You can also, as a parent, become ordinary. You can choose to become extraordinary. And so here's my challenge question, guys. It's literally a choice. Do you think ordinary parents can produce extraordinary kids, or do extraordinary parents produce extraordinary kids? Rhetorical question, just something to think about. So my next tip is this idea of instilling these habits when it comes to money, when it comes to time, and these habits can produce these winning routines and these winning mindsets, which ultimately kind of make a better human that's coming and growing into the world. So when we teach them like healthy habits, then build that into the routines and success becomes natural, right? So like managing your time. I have routines and things that I have to do every day. I have things that checklists and things that I work through. And I have habits and routines. I have a warm up, things I have to do first thing in the morning, things that I do before I go to bed. And I have like these habits and these routines. I don't even think about it. It's just like an automatic. So obviously things like brushing your teeth, getting ready for bed, like those are all normal things. But if you can weave other things, like maybe you spend 30 minutes at night, either meditating, praying, reading a book, something that just kind of quiets and gets you ready for bed. So things like even managing money, you can put a financial challenge out there in front of your kids. So what we did was when our kids were 14 and 15, our oldest was 15, we told them, we said, whatever money you save on your 16th birthday, we're going to match it, right, for a car. And so our 15-year-old in Nashville here where we live, they don't have a lot of jobs for that age group. It's usually 16 or 18-year-olds. And we have to, she had to call around and she ended up finding a few places. And so I drove her to an interview and I waited in the car and she comes back, after 30 minutes from the interview, she's got this big smile on her face and she says, I start on Monday. And so in their first year, as a 15-year-old, she literally saved $4,500, which is pretty good for a 15-year-old. And so we matched that. She ended up getting like a $9,000 VW Beetle, and fast forward a year, and she ended up wrecking it. And she was so distraught about the car being wrecked that we couldn't get her to calm down. She was in the back of the ambulance, and we couldn't get her to calm down because she was so distraught about that car. She said, "What are we going to do, Dad? I worked hard." And I'm like, "Sweetie, it's going to be okay. We have insurance." And, explain the whole thing. And so this idea of putting this like challenge in front of your kids that's more than just a few weeks away, like this, in this case, this was a year away. So it required a year of focus to go through that. Now compare what we did to, let's say, a family member named Doug, where he purchased his kids brand new cars when they were 16. And he would point to those cars and he'd tell me that those cars look like they're 10 years old. And in fact, they're only 2 years old. And that's because the mindset was, if I destroy these cars, then Dad will buy me a new one, right? So they would burn the tires, never took care of it, never had oil change, like just ran it into the ground. And the idea was, Dad will buy me a new one. You guys see the difference between those two approaches? And I'm not fussing at anybody if they bought their kids brand new cars. I'm just saying it takes intentionality. You have to think about all these little things that help your kids kind of set them up for success. So I don't know if you guys, some of you who have teenagers, I don't know if you ever feel like your kids have this false limiting belief that you're an ATM machine, and mom and dad are not an ATM machine. So I remember many, many times my kids would say, "Dad, I need $30 to buy my friend a gift for their birthday." I'm like, "You have a job. Why don't you buy your friend a gift?" And this idea that what they want equals what they have to work for. And in our example, we obviously help them with the financing part of the car, but they had to work for it, right? So we every dollar they saved, we gave them $1. And the idea of connecting those two dots between what you want and what you work for. Otherwise, it's like, well, I want this thing and I want you to pay for it. Well, you don't really teach them to become independent humans. When you do that, you create dependency, right? Yeah, Darian said his daughter wanted to be scuba certified. Yep. And so he would pay. Okay, great. That's amazing. That's exactly what you want to do, is save your money for holidays, birthday parties, whatever, and you're able to save and get scuba certified. And again, that's a great example. You're connecting what you want or what they want with what they have to work for. Otherwise, you literally are an ATM machine. You put in the card and out comes money. You pull Dad's arm down and out comes $100 bill, right? Yeah. Yep. And so one of the things that our kids did was, this is super popular for like early teens, probably 12, 13, is this thing called micro businesses. I don't know if you guys have ever thought about this, but both of our daughters had micro businesses when they were early teens. And so things like normal things you've probably heard of, babysitting, lawn care, pet sitting. There's websites where you can literally buy e-commerce stores that are existing and online now. And so my youngest at the time, she made these little bracelets, the equestrian daughter. She made these bracelets and it had her horse name on one side and her name on the other, right? So she sold those on Instagram for, I don't know, 20 or 30 bucks. So she had these little micro businesses. And the micro business isn't really about making money as much as it is learning how money works. So money would have to come in, she'd have to buy some materials, she'd have to do the work, she'd have to deliver the product, right? And it was all sold to people in the local area, where she would put it in the post in the mail and send it off. And then Shelby, our oldest, she likes to travel. So we decided one day we're going to buy this Instagram travel account. It had, I don't remember how many, it was like 130,000 followers or something. We paid $1,500 for it. And people would literally pay her, Jeremy, I think you paid her once, to like 20 or 50 bucks to post content to the followers. And again, it's a micro business. It doesn't cost a lot of money, but it's not about the money. It's about the experience that comes from that. So if you can introduce this idea of being diligent and spending time on things that really help shape the experiences beyond just, a normal person. When you think about a business, you think about office space, you think about insurance, employees, all the normal business. But in this case, we're talking about micro business, like little bitty things that cost a few thousand or a few $100s to start. And you put them in charge and just watch them flourish. And my daughter...
Okay, Matt, like type in a 3 if that's a new concept for you guys. Like having your child purchase, again, this can be a YouTube account, this can be a Twitter account, this can be an Instagram account, this can be, I don't think Facebook does it, but maybe a Facebook page, this could be LinkedIn. There's so much that can be online that can be purchased. In fact, even video game accounts can be purchased, right? Especially with Roblox and other games, right? People can build up their character and sell their character to someone else who wants it. And instead of spending that amount of time to build up the character, they can purchase the thing. That's an example of a micro business. And for all those who are typing in a 3, my dear friends, that's a gift that both Matt and myself, we didn't have when we were growing up, but you can parlay into your children and say, hey, these are some opportunities that you have now in front of you. And if they're on their computers, they're on their phones, if they're more technology specific than you are, I learned something today from Gabe that I had no idea that you could do Command Shift 5 on a Mac to record a screen automatically. I knew Command Shift 3 and Command Shift 4, but I didn't know Command Shift 5 even existed. I didn't know that was a thing.
Is that a video?
Ironically,
it records like
what's
a video.
That, Matt?
Does it record like a video? We've never done that.
Yeah, it records a video.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
Gabe taught everyone that. Type in a 2 if you learned that for the first time.
Yeah.
Here's Gabe right here, teaching all kinds of stuff. So this guy is amazing with technology. He's better than me on so many aspects. And so this is something you can consider, my friends, something that, Matt's really dropping knowledge bombs here. Is like, that was a really, really, I think, a big lesson for your daughter. And that was so cool to be a part of.
Yep. So as you guys are entrepreneurs and as you're growing, like your trading accounts, your bank accounts, all of this, I'm trying to get you to think about what happens when you pass this on. Right? You don't want to be the guy who has a 52-year-old son who can't function as an adult, right? And so I was talking to a friend of mine last year about this book, and he meets with family offices. Type a 7 into the chat pane if you're familiar with a family office. If not, I can explain it real quick. But he would meet with these high net worth family offices, and they would invest in different projects. And apparently no one knows what a family office is, Jeremy. And he had this thing that he nicknamed this same idea. He had a slightly different take on it, but he nicknamed it the 3 generation of t-shirts. And so he was explaining this to me, and the way he explained it, he said the first generation would be like you and me, Jeremy, right? Our t-shirts are the dress code. We build something of value for 10, 20 years. We pass along to Junior. Junior isn't 100% tuned into what it took to build that. It's handed over and he gets the keys to it and he continues. He grows it a little bit marginally, and maybe it grows a little bit. And then 10, 20 years later, he hands the keys to his son, who has totally clueless, no idea about anything, and runs into the ground, and the whole 3 generations of t-shirts starts all over again. And so if you think about that, you think about, wow, building a company requires a lot of effort, and handing a company that's already built and running to your son, your daughter, who don't quite fully understand what it took, the hard work that it took to build that. And as I told my story at the beginning of meeting this guy in this barbecue restaurant, he did that in two generations, where he built this empire, prominent Nashville gated community, all right, and his son just couldn't function. So anyways, all that to say that I want you guys to just be thinking about that as entrepreneurs. And the interesting thing about having kids is that when you make investments into your kids, it's very different than buying a piece of software, buying a machinery, something where you can see like this immediate ROI, because you're investing, and you don't necessarily see any, we'll just say little to no results of that until years and years and years down the road. So just something I want you guys to think about, something to be mindful of. And then like our kids, as they became older, we put different challenges in front of them. So just as an example, imagine you sit down, some of you have younger kids, imagine when they get to be I don't know, 25 years old. You tell them, what do you need to learn now so that you can manage like a $5 million portfolio when you're 25, when you turn 25? What do you need to learn now so that you're prepared when that day comes, right? You're putting this bigger challenge out there. And it's a challenge that's not going to be something that, you know, a week or two and you'll have it. It's more of a longer term thing to think about. And then obviously, as where most of us are traders, you got, you know, what do you need to do to work with them to get them to that stage? Maybe you don't have a $5 million portfolio to hand off to them, but guess what? They're not 25 years old yet. So you have plenty of time to get there, right? And so the idea of you working with them, you helping them, you teaching them to trade, you know, we have trading for kids, which is coming up tomorrow night. We have like a trading AMA. We have trading for young adults. We have all kinds of classes, beginner trading classes that you can literally work with them, help them, mold them, teach them, and pass your knowledge on to them so that you can have that size account when they turn 25. And that becomes a longer term thing to work towards. Now, how many of you guys put a 5 in the chat pane? If that sounds like an amazing thing to do, is be able to hand something like that off to your kids. And again, they would know, because you've worked with them for years and years and years, they would know that that's something that you can grow and work together and build. Yep. Cool. Nikita, man, $5 million. Yep. For that little girl. Yep. You need to learn first. Yeah. Well, Darian, you're in good company, my man. That's what we do all day, every day. So I don't know if you guys have ever heard there's a TED Talk by Angela Duckworth, and it talks about the biggest predictor for success for kids. And it's not what you think. It's not, you know, your financial status. It's not the school you go to. It's not, you know, your net worth of your parents. Is none of that. It always boils down to grit. And grit is that stick-to-itiveness, even when things get tough. And so having a strong mindset and having that grit really, really helps propel you to have successful kids. But at first you have to master yourself, right? You have to be a ninja of yourself before you can pass that along and influence your kids. But once we're able to do that, we can all literally change the world, right? So you kind of help them think through and put challenges in front of them. And so instead of them saying, I can't do something, then you rewire things and you have them ask the question, how can I do something? And there's literally a term called neural plasticity. Type a 7 in chat pane if you've ever heard that term before. And it's literally like this medical process of rewiring your brain. Go Google it, neural plasticity. Let's see, neural plasticity. And the idea is that you can literally improve your mind and rewire yourself to think differently than you've thought before. And it's a pretty interesting medical, like scientific term. So, and then as parents, you need to get clear on what you want. And when I say what you want, I don't necessarily mean what you want your kids to be. That's their choice. That's their decisions. We all have hopes for your kids to do this and be that and have that career. Of course, we all want our kids to be traders. That's a given here in this community, right? There's no question about it. Gabe's going to be a trader, right, Jeremy? There's no question about it. Nikita, the little one's going to be we all have these things we want them to be, but it's really up to them, right? So we have to get clear on what we want so we can have this purpose and this intentionality in our life so that we spend every day doing things that really help propel us and push us forward. So some of you guys know that that we have some partnerships with some companies that are very, very successful. And one of the, Brittany Turner, one of our partners, has this thing where she literally will make you write your eulogy. Now, I always thought it was a little morbid, and I'm not going to get into the details of that, but I want you guys to think about what you want your life, not your kids' life, but what do you want your life to really be about? And once you figure that out, spend half a day figuring that out, then literally any opportunities that come to you, you now have a filter to say, is this an opportunity? Is this a distraction? And it becomes really, really powerful that I have projects that come to me every week. Am I going to work on this? Am I not going to work on this? Is this worth my time? And I literally filter that through. I literally wrote my eulogy and I read through it every day. Is it something that that propels me towards what I want to do. If not, then I'm going to pass. It's going to be a hard pass. And so I got invited to speak to the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana a few weeks ago, talked to their entrepreneur class, and that fit in with what was important to me. I got invited to be on panels of other things that didn't align with what I really, really wanted. So again, once you can get clear on what you want, then you can empower your kids to kind of do the same thing. Now, Jeremy and I were literally on an island, private island in the British Virgin Islands. Jeremy's been there, 3 times now, I think. One time was like a big 6-week. He just never left, right?
A few times.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that we were on the island and we were talking about, what are the causes that are super important to us? And some of you guys know that we launched our own nonprofit back. We did a session on that yesterday. And we wanted to, on the island, we're literally talking about how to change the world. And something that's important to most of us are limiting and minimizing and ending this terrible thing called human trafficking. But you have to have an outpouring of success. You have to be in a place of abundance so that you can give to these causes, so that you can literally change the world. And success can literally accelerate your impact and your kids' impact on the world. So most of you know that, or most of you have heard the saying that money changes you, right? Most of you have probably heard that. I believe that money just accelerates and exaggerates who you already are. So if you're a nice, kind, caring, giving person, when you have 10x or 100x the money you have now, you're going to be a more nice, kind, caring, giving person, right? If you're a rude jerk and right with 10x or 5x or 100x bank account, you're going to be an even bigger version of that. So I feel like just something to just think about is who you are literally becomes exaggerated when you become more successful, and that all the more reason to be super intentional. And so we can all accelerate our impact on the world as we grow and come from a place of abundance that we're able to give and give back to things that are important to us. So that's all I got for you guys. Questions?
Love it. That's amazing. Again, guys, thank you so much for spending an hour with us. Who here does have questions? Again, it could be, I know tomorrow night, same time, same place, we're going to have an Ask Me Anything, where you and or your children can ask me and or Matt anything that's on your mind. Literally any question that you have. Remember, the quality of your questions determines the quality of your life. Matt, do you remember the TED Talk name?
Angela Duckworth. Yep. Let me see if I can find the link. I can post it in here. Yeah, it was Angela Duckworth.
She's the one that wrote the book Grit, right? I think.
I
thought she did.
Here, let me see if I can find the link. Oops. There we go. I found the link. I'll post it in here. But she actually did like a scientific study on success in kids in the inner cities and kids that lived in the suburbs. And she it's pretty amazing. You have to watch. It's just a couple minute long video. So
got it. Yeah, that's a good book, man. Angela Duckworth. If you're listening, thanks for writing that book. It was a good read. Yeah. Nice little read. Excellent book. Grit, because that's hard to. Pretty much the book is about her measuring, like trying to measure what is grit, who has it, why don't they have it,
right? And it's hard to like define what it is too, right?
Yeah. My boy Matt has some grit. That is for sure.
Yep.
Darian says, how do you create good habits in your kids when you only have them 50% of the time and the other 50% it's a free for all? Yeah.
So is that like a shared custody? Is that what you're asking about? I think. Okay. Yeah. So, well, I mean, if that's all you got, that's all you got. You have to be super, super intentional. I would say if you can, this is something I learned from Brittany Turner earlier this year. If you and your ex don't see raising children the same way, what you want to try to do instead of like lecturing change, you want to be in a position to inspire change. And it's super difficult to do, but it can be done. And the idea of you helping them see that there's this connection between being super intentional and having positive outcomes right? Helping them see that. Now, I don't know the situation with the ex, but that would be my suggestion, is instead of trying to lecture change, is inspire change, whatever that looks like for daughter, son, whatever that looks like. Try to do what you can to inspire change.
Yeah, that's a great point, Matt. And I don't really have a lot of experience with that at all, but I like the inspire change in the sense, Darian, where I'm getting the feeling that the other person, the other party in that relationship is an absolute circus. So the goal is, I mean, you're probably more structured and rigid and like have rules and like it's more of a thing. The best thing to do is every time that they're over and they spend time with you, that 50% of the time, the inspire change, just do dramatic, amazing, and incredible things that they can do with you. So for example, if you're like, hey children, we're going to go on a 10-mile walk today. Or, hey guys, we're going to go run up and down the stairs 100 times, just to have them do it with you. But not only having you do it, like they're doing it with you. So you're doing something with them that inspires motivation and confidence in them, right? Because they see that you're doing it. What I do know about in my limited experience with children is that they just listen and do everything that you say or do. So they're going to be models and replicas of one of your parents. And even if they're not fully replicas of you and you feel like, hey, they should be, right? They have the ability to see and kind of hear everything that you do and say. So yeah, man, that's definitely not the perfect environment, but still something that you can do a lot with. For sure.
Yeah, inspire change.
Question. Yeah, great question, brother. Think of some really crazy, cool ways, things that you can do with your children to make them get all excited.
Yep. So Nikita asks, is grit an alternative to oatmeal for breakfast? That's grits.
It's true. Just got to add an S. It's the same thing, really.
Yep.
Good old grit. Hop says, I know that being part of successful requires talking with people about being sociable. My son is very young, but is scared to talk with people he doesn't know. Any tips? That's a very valid thing, man. I mean, especially when you're young, like you're just naturally scared. My thought is, make sure he watches you do it. Best I can say, like, how old is your son, Hoff? Because if he's young, he's 2, so you're good, man.
No, don't worry about it. He'll grow out of it.
Yeah, don't even worry about it. Like 2 to 7, they're just naturally kind of terrified of just other people other than you.
Right. So, now, if you're going to say he's 15, that's another story, right?
Yeah, it's a different story. Absolutely. But one thing that I did, guys, and I think a lot of people have done this in the past, but, put on motivational videos where a motivational speaker is speaking to a group of people and have your children watch that. It doesn't have to be all the time, obviously, but my dad I grew up with Les Brown, and I watched it. I'd probably say at least an hour of his tapes or something a month, give or take, for 2 or 3 years. And it was just good to see other people speaking on stage to a group of people, because it kind of helped me get it fired up a little bit. So.
Cool. Great question. Any other questions? Nikita, you got some questions, I'm sure. Stephanie, Zochi, somebody's got questions, I'm sure.
Or not. If you guys are good, you're good.
Paul,
By the way,
Troy.
guys, he'll be with us tomorrow for Ask Me Anything Kids Edition. He'll have a great question for us, right, Gabe?
You have some curveballs, Gabe? No?
No curveballs?
No.
Okay.
Paul says all good. Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Hoff said I already started training my son to do the ice cube challenge. He loves it.
Yeah, nice.
What is the ice cube challenge?
The ice cube challenge is when you put an ice cube in the sink at the same time every single day for 7 days. It's a tough one. Every single day, the same.
Darian failed after day 3. Well, start again. It's not too late to start again.
Yep, it's a tough one. It's a massive, massive challenge. All right, guys, you rock. Thanks for being a part of this. I can't wait for the book, What Entrepreneurs Teach Their Kids, written by my boy, Matt DeLong.
Coming in October. Yep, coming in October.
You're incredible. Thank you all for being here. I love you so much.